4 months after just 2 doses.
Skyrizi may increase your risk of infections and lower your ability to fight them. Before treatment, your doctor should check you for infection.
Believe it, Geico could save you 15% or more on car insurance.
An unprecedented Democratic presidential town hall event. Climate crisis. Biden, Warren, Sanders, Harris, Buttigieg, Klobuchar, Booker, O'Rourke, Yang, Castro. 10 candidates, 10 town halls, all on one night. Wednesday night, 5 Eastern.
We have new details about the man who killed 7 people and injured 22 others in West Texas. The New York Times reports the 36-year-old had been fired from his trucking job a few hours before he went on a shooting rampage. Police have not determined a motive. They're investigating his home. Meanwhile, in Odessa, a grieving community is remembering the victims.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound, and grace my peace.
As mourners gathering at a vigil Sunday, singing hymns and praying for the people they lost. CNN's Ryan Young was there.
Another tragedy in an American city. So many questions about why this shooting happened, but what we do know so far is the details about police officers getting ready to pull over a man in a car, and apparently they were pulling him over because of failure of using a signal. That man used the gun to shoot through a back window toward officers. From there, a spree started of gunfire and a police chase. It ended with police surrounding a 36-year-old man and shooting and killing him. At a memorial Sunday night, we saw hundreds of people come together to pay their respects to the fallen. 7 people are dead, 22 were injured, but the big question is, why did this have to happen? And in fact, 2 of the youngest people here had to pay their respects to a friend they lost in a shooting they called senseless.
Even though she's gone, she's still here in my heart. And this is all for her, so people could know who she was. Because she was everything. And everyone, this is Layla Hernandez. I just think that she needs to come. Like, in my mind, I want her to come back, but she can't. And I don't know, I just pray to God that she's okay wherever she is, doing well, and we'll see her again.
Authorities did hold a news conference, but they were light on details so far. What we do know is the shooter was 36 years old. He was a white male. He used an AR-15. They did perform a search warrant at his house, but from there, there's no clear determination of what the motive could be. This investigation continues, and there's lots of questions in this community. Ryan Young, CNN, Odessa, Texas.
One of the youngest injured in Saturday's attack was just 17 months old. The family of Anderson Davis, this little girl, says she is recovering. She's expected to have surgery in the coming hours. Her parents released a statement. It reads in part, "Words cannot express the emotions we are experiencing after living through the tragic events that unfolded in our hometown yesterday afternoon. We praise God for walking beside us during this time, and our prayers go out to all the families that are walking this same walk." The little girl's teacher has started a GoFundMe campaign, and so far it has raised more than $175,000. And earlier, she spoke with CNN about the baby's recovery.
They went in and they closed the hole in her bottom lip. They closed the hole in her tongue. They have to go see an oral surgeon for her 2 front teeth. On top of that, they had to open up her chest to get the shrapnel out. They left 1 piece in there because it was just too small to get, but she's expected to make a 100% recovery, and she's acting like nothing ever happened. So I started the GoFundMe yesterday. I called her family and asked her family, I didn't want to invade their privacy in such a tragic time. She told me that she would love for that to be. I called her family and asked her family, I didn't want to invade their privacy in such a tragic time. She told me that she would love for that to be done, that the last thing that you think about, after your daughter gets shot is, how am I going to pay for this? So I went ahead and set up the GoFundMe account. I had the goal at $20,000. and within 20 minutes we hit that goal. So I upped it up to $50,000, and within another hour we hit that goal. So I just finally upped it to $200,000, and we've almost hit that goal. The money will go straight to the Davis family. It will help with the care flight that she had to have, the surgery she has to have, the oral surgeon that she has to go see, and it will just take a whole load off of that family.
CNN's Brooke Baldwin spoke with the man who witnessed the attack. Dustin Fawcett says he saw baby Anderson shortly after she'd been injured. Dustin is also a new father.
I saw the mother getting out with baby Anderson. Yeah,
baby Anderson.
And that's talk about hitting home. That it was pretty surreal to see seeing the blood coming from her face and mouth and kind of on her hands. I had hoped maybe it was just the shattered from the glass that had gotten her, maybe just in a traffic accident something had gotten her while she was bleeding. You always hope that she's not shot. But the way her mother was consoling her and the way everybody was reacting, you could tell it wasn't quite critical that a bullet hadn't hit her.
President Trump called the shooting in Texas, quote, a very sad situation. He says he's working with Congress to deal with gun violence in America, but he's also downplaying the need for background checks on gun buyers.
We're looking at a lot of different things. We're looking at a lot of different bills, ideas, concepts. It's been going on for a long while. Background checks. I will say that for the most part, sadly, if you look at the last 4 or 5, going back even 5 or 6 or 7 years, for the most part, as strong as you make your background checks, they would not have stopped any of it. So it's a big problem. It's a mental problem. It's a big problem.
The governor of Texas, who has witnessed several mass shootings in his term, says he's tired of all the bloodshed.
I'm heartbroken by the crying of the people of the state of Texas. I'm tired of the dying of the people of the state of Texas. Too many Texans are in mourning. Too many Texans have lost their lives. The status quo in Texas is unacceptable, and action is needed.
The governor is a big supporter of gun rights. Notably, this latest massacre happened just one day before more lax gun laws went into effect in Texas. We'll be right back.
T-Mobile's newest signal reaches farther than ever before. Oh yeah. More engineers, more towers, more coverage. It's a network that gives you freedom. From big cities to small towns, we're with you. Because life can take you almost anywhere. T-Mobile is with you. No signal goes farther or is more reliable in keeping you connected.
Challenge the past. Challenge accepted. Purdue University Global. Affordable online education for driven working adults. Apply now at purdueglobal.edu.
All money managers might seem the same, but some give their clients cookie-cutter portfolios. Fisher Investments take...
It's 1:30. We're live from Atlanta with continuing coverage of Hurricane Dorian. Thank you for joining us this Monday morning. We'll go back to CNN Live here in just a few moments as our coverage continues.
insurance, but it's not really something you want to buy. It's not sexy.
Oh, delicious.
Or delicious.
Or fun.
And since you need both car and home insurance, why not bundle them with Esurance and save up to 10%, which you could spend on things you really want to buy, like, well, I don't know what you want to buy because I'm just a guy on your TV. Esurance. It's surprisingly painless.
You must be Steven's phone.
Know who's on your network and control who shouldn't be with Xfinity X5. Simple, easy, awesome.
Climate Crisis. 10 candidates, 10 town halls, all on one night. Wednesday, 5 Eastern.
Welcome back. You're watching CNN Newsroom live from Atlanta. I'm Natalie Allen, and here are our top stories. The New York Times is reporting that the gunman in the Texas mass shooting Saturday had been fired from his trucking job a few hours before he carried out the shooting attack. In Odessa, Texas, mourners gathered at a vigil for the 7 people killed and 22 others injured in the shooting. Chinese state media warning Hong Kong protesters this way with this quote, "The end is coming." They're addressing anyone who attempts to disrupt Hong Kong and, quote, antagonize China. This comes the day after demonstrators blocked transport links to the city's international airport. 25 flights were canceled, and there was gridlock for hours. Reigning tennis champion Novak Djokovic has withdrawn from his 4th-round match at the U.S. Open. The world #1 tennis player was forced to retire from the tournament due to an existing shoulder injury. Djokovic was losing to Stan Wawrinka. Stan now moving to the semifinals. Forecasters say Hurricane Dorian could spend the next 24 hours over the Bahamas with heavy rain and sustained winds of 180 miles per hour. That's nearly 300 kilometers an hour. It is the strongest storm to ever hit the islands and the strongest anywhere on the planet this year. Dorian has ripped the roofs off homes and brought widespread flooding. Storm chaser Aaron Jajak is joining me now from Vero Beach, Florida. Aaron, thank you for being with us. Are you starting to feel the effects of this storm yet?
Yeah, I mean, we're definitely just now, or this afternoon, you know, it was a big difference between the last 24 hours where it wasn't really much wind yesterday, but now, just starting this afternoon, we've had these sustained winds here now, at least 20 miles an hour, gusty 25, 30 miles per hour. So not quite tropical storm force winds yet, but I expect by morning, there'll be a different scenario out there. It should be much bigger seas, and that definitely should have those tropical storm force winds in the morning here.
How many people have you noticed that it seems are staying there in the Vero Beach vicinity and riding this out?
Yeah, so there's definitely people are sticking around here. I think, you know, they feel for the most part, you know, it's probably going to be a pretty close call, but it won't likely come on to land here. But, you know, as you know, you look at the models, some of those models do have a couple of those models do come on shore here and do have a landfall in Florida. So, you know, it's a risk here if you don't evacuate. You're in an evacuation zone. You know, you're taking a gamble here by not evacuating.
What have emergency responders been saying in the Vero Beach area as far as not knowing where this storm will go? Even just in the past hour, we've been hearing it may be taking more of a western track, and that would not be good news for that area.
Yeah, you know, so here we do have evacuations, mandatory evacuation in the morning. So I'm in a resort hotel here right now, but they're making us leave at 11 a.m. I was actually hoping I could stay here one more night because it seems like this is going to be a multi-day slow event unfolding here. So, you know, for the officials, you know, I think everybody they've been taking the proper precautions, preparing this year, and they are, you know, ready to reverse flow if they need to and get people out of here. And so I don't think there's really much concern as far as like getting the people that are left here out of here. I think a lot of people have left. There's not many people here. The few people that are here, you know, they're used to this type of situation, and they're probably going to stay here and ride the storm out.
Right. When was the last time that Vero Beach experienced a hurricane.
I think I was talking to the lady that lives here, and she said it was the last time was that Matthew 2016 hurricane. It came cruising up along the coast here, and a lot of people that I was talking to around here, they stuck around for that storm. But we kind of have that same situation this time with that hurricane just sitting offshore here, and Florida just battering the coast for multiple days.
All right, well, we appreciate it. As you say, the wind's starting to whip up there. Aaron Jack for us in Vero Beach. Thanks, Aaron.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks a lot.
Well, scientists have long warned that climate change and rising ocean temperatures could make hurricanes worse. CNN's Dana Bash spoke with acting FEMA Administrator Peter Gaynor about that, but he sidestepped the question about the impact of global warming on storms like Dorian.
Researchers say that we're going to see even more very intense hurricanes due to the climate crisis. Do you agree with that?
You can look through the history of the past 25 years or so. There's been more hurricanes, more intensity. Again, I think we can look to that at another date. But I think the message today is for residents, especially with the new Cat 5, is don't take your eye off the storm.
Well, here are the facts on how climate change could affect hurricanes. Rising sea levels are making storm surge more dangerous and making storms wetter, increasing the rainfall rate, as well as the amount of precipitation a storm can produce. Strong storms are getting even stronger because of warmer oceans, and storms are rapidly intensifying more frequently. Next here, we are following the most serious cross-border exchange between Israel and Hezbollah in years along the Lebanese border. Live report coming next. Also, angry protesters in Hong Kong are refusing to back down. But after a weekend of turmoil, China is losing patience. More about that coming up.
Take us with you. Try CNN on Sirius XM 116.
We have this story from Yemen. Every single person in a detention facility was wounded or killed in a series of recent airstrikes south of Sana'a. That according to the International Red Cross. Yemen rebels say at least 60 people were killed, 50 hurt in the attacks by the Saudi-led coalition. The Red Cross says the death toll could be at least 100. The coalition claims it bombed a legitimate military target which housed drones and missile depots, adding that civilians were advised in advance to stay away from the area. Well, tensions remain high along the Lebanese border after the sharpest escalation in more than 4 years between Hezbollah and Israel. Iran-backed Hezbollah says it attacked an Israeli army base and a nearby military vehicle on Sunday. Israel responded with artillery strikes and helicopter fire. CNN's Oren Lieberman now joins us live from northern Israel with more on the latest on this situation. Oren.
Natalie, we're standing here in northern Israel, very close to the Israel-Lebanon border. In fact, that's southern Lebanon there behind me. And you already get a sense of how quickly things have changed since Sunday afternoon. There are cars driving normally on the road here behind us. And as we saw in the town we were in this morning, everyone is sort of getting back to their normal routine. There is, however, a drone we hear overhead, and that is an indication that tensions here remain high. And this round all starts on Sunday afternoon when Iran-backed Hezbollah in Lebanon fired a series of anti-tank missiles at military headquarters right along the border. Israel says those anti-tank missiles struck a building inside the military headquarters as well as a military vehicle, though they say no Israeli soldiers were injured in the strike. Israel's retaliation included more than 100 artillery shells fired towards where those anti-tank missiles were fired from, as well as what Israel termed very limited helicopter strikes. But as quickly as this began, it was over. Within 2 hours of those anti-tank missiles being fired, the Israeli military had lifted restrictions on civilians in Gaza and on the northern border. And that, as we've seen along the Gazan border, is a very strong indication that Israel, for now at least, believes this round of fighting is over. And certainly as we look around with those civilian restrictions being lifted, that's what it looks like now. But the situation remains tense. How did this start? Well, Hezbollah had promised to retaliate after Israeli strikes in Syria about a week and a half ago. Israel says they were thwarting a drone attack from Iranian forces based in Syria. There were also drone strikes in Beirut, widely attributed to Israel. Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah had vowed Israel would respond, and Israel was expecting that response. That's what we saw play out across the Israel-Lebanon border on Sunday afternoon. Natalie?
Yeah, and as we said, the first time this has happened in several years. From all indications, are people carrying on with their normal lives after this?
It looks that way right now from the people we've seen, from the driving we've done through a few of the cities and towns between where we started our morning and now. This is certainly not a peaceful border. There's no relations between Israel and Lebanon, certainly not between the Israeli military and Hezbollah. Yet for years it was the quietest border and perhaps one of the calmest. And even if it is tense, people here are used to living under that tension. And that's what it seems they're doing once again this morning.
All right, Oren Lieberman for us there in northern Israel. Oren, thank you. The China State News Agency says the end is coming for demonstrations that disrupt Hong Kong and antagonize China. And Hong Kong's security secretary says the protesters are now showing, quote, signs of terror. This after a weekend of some of the most violent protests in the past 3 months of political turmoil. Police and protesters got into heated battles in the streets Saturday. Demonstrators threw gas bombs and burned barricades as police shot water cannon and tear gas to try and disperse the crowds. On Sunday, protesters caused major traffic disruptions to the city's airport and vandalized several subway stations. CNN's Will Ripley gave us this report from the front lines.
Right now, riot police have just moved out of this area, and you can hear the crowds shouting at them, cheering as they go. This has been a really extraordinary scene out here because protesters were determined to stage some sort of a disruptive event at the Hong Kong airport, but they weren't able to get inside the airport. Let's get over here. Because security around the airport is only allowing in passengers and flight crews. So what the protesters did instead was they caused disruption around the airport. They set up barricades, set them on fire. The streets were gridlocked. The bridge to the airport completely impassable for hours. People had to get out of their cars and walk. People with their suitcases and luggage had to walk sometimes more than an hour just to make their flight. And now the riot police who came here to this station had really nothing to do because all of the protesters who came into the MTR vandalized, spray painted, set off the sprinkler system. They all left before the police even arrived. So now officers are leaving after we didn't see them make any arrests here, as far as we could tell. And they move on to the next location where the next group of protesters might pop up. And police don't really know what the protesters are going to do next. That's been the whole point of this protest movement. Move quickly, mess things up, and get out before the police arrive. They feel that this is a sustainable model to make their point. 13th consecutive weekend of protests here in Hong Kong, and even though the crowds are smaller, the protesters are more aggressive, and this shows no sign of dying down. Will Ripley, CNN, Hong Kong.
Coming next, showdown over Brexit this week could be pivotal in the UK as Prime Minister Boris Johnson issues a warning to no-deal opponents.
There were ants everywhere, thousands of them. And the problem was too big for us, but not for Orkin. And Sarah, she's organized, she's meticulous, she's like a part of the family.
And she can do backflips on the trampoline. Wow!
New Align Whole Food Probiotic, a blend of quality probiotics and fermented whole food botanicals, expertly curated to naturally support your gut health every day. Go with Align Whole Food Blend, from the pros in digestive health.
Who's ready for a great ride? Ready to work out my constipation?
Let's not talk about constipation. Zenocod's natural vegetable laxative ingredient means occasional constipation won't be on your mind.
Keep it moving, people! Am I right? Come on, everybody! Work it out!
Say no more to occasional constipation with clinically proven effective Zenocod. Also try new Zenocod Ginger Care, made from natural ginger root. Helps relieve occasional upset stomach and nausea.
Sure, a resume is a great way to see someone's experience, but you're not hiring a resume, you're hiring a person. That's why Indeed offers tools that help bridge the gap between a candidate and their resume, like skill tests, which let you actually see a candidate's abilities in action to make sure they're a good fit for the job. It's no wonder Indeed delivers 3 times more hires than any other job site. See beyond the resume with Indeed. Get a free sponsored job upgrade on your first posting at Indeed.com/offer.
Jimmy John's is buying someone a house so they can deliver them a sandwich. Read the legal copy below if you must, but we assure you, it will be a real house. Enter to win at jimmyjohns.com, because sandwich.
This is Hal. This is Hal's heart. It's been broken and put back together. This is also Hal's heart. And this is Hal's relief, knowing he's covered. This is Hal's heart, and it's beating better than ever. This is what Medicare from Blue Cross Blue Shield does for Hal. And with easy access to quality health care, imagine what we can do for you. This is the benefit of Blue.
With my hepatitis C, I felt I couldn't be at my best for my family. In only 8 weeks with Mavyret, I was cured and left those doubts behind.
I faced reminders of my Hep C every day, but in only 8 weeks with Mavyret, I was cured.
Even hanging with friends, I worried about my Hep C, but in only 8 weeks with Mavyret, I was cured.
Mavyret is the only 8-week cure for all common types of Hep C. Before starting Mavyret, your doctor will test if you've had hepatitis B, which may flare up and cause serious liver problems during and after treatment. Tell your doctor if you've had hepatitis B, a liver or kidney transplant, other liver problems, HIV-1, or other medical conditions, and all medicines you take, including herbal supplements. Don't take Mavyret with atazanavir or rifampin, or if you've had certain liver problems. Common side effects include headache and tiredness. With Hep C behind me, I feel free.
Fearless.
And there's no looking back, because I am cured.
Talk to your doctor about Mavyret.
I managed to book the last room for $150. Me too. Some hotel booking sites panic you into booking the last room. Instead, use Trivago. Trivago will search for availability and compare hotel prices from hundreds of websites worldwide. Hotel Trivago.
Closed captioning brought to you by Mesobook.com.
We offer a free book on mesothelioma. Call for the free book and receive so much more. Call 1-800-831-3700.
The Brexit battle is entering what looks like a tumultuous week ahead for the United Kingdom. Prime Minister Boris Johnson is out with a warning, telling the Sunday Times, quote, people campaigning against no deal are making it more likely. CNN's Hadass Gold has more on what he means, along with some other political developments.
The battle lines on Brexit are hardening ahead of what will be a pivotal week in the UK Parliament. In his first newspaper interview after suspending Parliament for longer than normal, Prime Minister Boris Johnson told the Sunday Times that an effort by opposition parties to pass a bill in Parliament to stop a no deal is actually making it more likely. Johnson questioned what the legislation would actually achieve, considering it would likely force another extension to the UK leaving the EU, something they've already done twice. And then, in an interview with BBC that stunned political observers here, Michael Gove, one of Johnson's senior cabinet ministers, actually declined to confirm that they would even abide by a bill blocking no deal if it were to pass.
If this legislation goes through Parliament, both Houses of Parliament, does the government abide by it?
Let's see what the legislation says.
But surely the answer has to be yes, it's the law.
Let's see what the legislation says. You're asking me about a pig in a poke, and I will wait to see what legislation the opposition may try to bring forward. But we know what their intention is.
Constitutional times, but for a government to say we won't abide by legislation is impossible, surely.
We will see what the legislation says when it is put forward. For me, the most important thing is to bear in mind, actually, we already have legislation in place, which an overwhelming majority of MPs voted for. We already have an EU withdrawal act. We already have the notice on Article 50, the process by which we leave the European Union. The overwhelming majority of MPs voted to do that.
I understand
What Keir Starmer is trying to do now is to say, you know, British people, I said that we would leave. I said in my manifesto that we would leave. But now I actually think we won't leave.
Meanwhile, on the other side of Brexit, we of course have the European Union watching all of this drama unfold. And in an op-ed for the Sunday Telegraph, the EU's chief Brexit negotiator, Michel Barnier, wrote that he is not optimistic about avoiding a no-deal Brexit, and that they are rejecting the UK's demands to scrap the Irish backstop. That is the condition that prevents a hard border between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland. And of course, beyond the fireworks in Parliament this week, the government's decision to suspend Parliament will also be tested in court, where several cases seeking an injunction are expected to start. Hadass Gold, CNN, London.
And from California, we've learned that actor and comedian Kevin Hart and 2 others are now recovering after a car crash near Los Angeles. Police say the driver lost control and then rolled down an embankment. According to the police report, both Hart and the driver have major back injuries. The 3rd passenger was not seriously injured. Again, revisiting our top story, we're keeping a close eye on Hurricane Dorian. It is now over the Bahamas. Sustained winds of 185 miles per hour or 300 kilometers per hour. There you see the eye going right over Freeport. The latest trajectory has the storm moving farther west, meaning it could impact Florida, we'll be having evacuations Monday morning, and it could impact all the way up through Georgia into South Carolina. Georgia has declared a state of emergency in the event that the storm impacts there. Very, very slow moving. It will continue to stay over the Bahamas for the next 24 hours. So this is a slow go, and it's menacing because we still don't know exactly where it will hit next. These are the scenes, the early scenes that we're getting in from the Bahamas. My colleagues George Howell and Rosemary Church will pick it up in our next hour. I'm Natalie Allen. Thank you for watching.
T-Mobile's newest signal reaches farther than ever before. Oh yeah. More engineers, more towers, more coverage.
This is Channel 1 Atlanta's continuing coverage of Hurricane Dorian. It's just before 2 o'clock this Monday morning. We'll be back with more coverage here live in just a moment. This is Channel 1 Atlanta News. I'm David Dutton. Here's what's happening at this half hour. Hurricane Dorian slamming the Bahamas right now with winds of 180 miles per hour. Reports of cries into the night from people stranded in floodwaters and reports of devastation from the island. Let's get the latest now from CNN.
Risk-free.
It was spies versus spies.
Nobody is untouchable.
Declassified. Return September 29th at 9.
Call 1-800-SANDS.
My cholesterol is borderline. I figure I can worry about it or do something about it. Garlic helps maintain healthy cholesterol safely and naturally. It's pharmacist recommended and it's odor-free. I'm taking charge of my cholesterol with Garlic.
Here, it all starts with a simple hello.
Hi, how can I help?
The data plan for everyone.
Everyone?
Everyone.
Let's send to everyone. Wi-Fi up there?
Sure, why not?
How'd he get out?
Camera might figure it out.
That was easy.
Glad I could help. At Xfinity, we're here to make life simple, easy, awesome. So come ask, shop, discover at your local Xfinity store today.
Climate crisis. 10 candidates, 10 town halls. All on one night. Wednesday, 5 Eastern.
Hello and welcome to our special coverage of Hurricane Dorian. I'm Rosemary Church.
And I'm George Howell. For our viewers here in the U.S. and around the world, we are keeping a very close eye on this incredibly strong storm.
Yeah, the Bahamas are getting pummeled right now by the strongest hurricane to ever hit the islands. Dorian is a catastrophic Category 5 storm with winds of 175 miles or about 300 kilometers an hour.
These pictures just really tell the story, don't they? I mean, you get a sense of what's happening there. At this point, the storm had slowed to a crawl, expected to stay over the Bahamas for the next 24 hours. The Bahamas Prime Minister took a somber tone on it on Sunday. Listen.
This is probably the most saddened and worst day of my life to address the Bahamian people. And I just want to say that as a physician, I've been trained to withstand many things, but never anything like this.
That really says it all right there. This storm has destroyed homes. It's ripped roofs off of buildings. One woman trapped with her family pleaded for help.
Please pray for us. Please pray for us, everyone. Please pray for us. Me and my baby, everyone that stay in the apartment building, we stuck right here. Please pray for us. Asking y'all, please. Baby, pray for us. Pray for Abigail, please. I'm begging y'all. My baby's only 4 months old. Please pray for us. I'm begging y'all. Pray for us.
Just feel the fear that she's dealing with in that situation. The flooding is also a big concern. The storm surge up to 23 feet or 7 meters. The Northwest Bahamas could see as much as 8 months worth of rain in just a few days alone.
This is now my house. The water is up to my car. Close the kitchen, stove.
And this is what Dorian looks like from the International Space Station. It is the strongest storm anywhere on the planet this year. And NOAA released pictures of Dorian's eye wall showing the clouds curving outward, a phenomenon known as the stadium effect. And our meteorologist, Ivan Cabrera, joins us now. So, Ivan, the images that we've seen of what people are dealing with in the Bahamas are just terrifying, and there's so much more to come.
There's so much more to come, and those pictures are going to pale in comparison to what we're going to be seeing over the next couple of days over the Bahamas. Once you start getting those aerial shots, you're going to be seeing areas that are just going to be completely destroyed 100% across the Bahamas. There's just an incredible scene, and we're not going to get those pictures for several days because of the slow movement of the storm. I mean, if you threw everything at this, as far as the storm surge, as far as the winds, as far as the rainfall, everything is there. By the way, this is now a historic storm. Only Allen has had stronger winds in the Atlantic here, 190-mile-an-hour winds. Dorian at 185, and as the last advisory, we're at 175 here. This is the brand new update from the National Hurricane Center. What happens when these storms get this strong, their eye can't contain itself for that much longer, and so they go through replacement cycles here. And as that happens, they weaken a little bit here, but that is not a weakening trend, I don't think, yet. 175, still a formidable Category 5 hurricane. I'll go in a little bit closer so you can see just the incredible, I mean, we couldn't have been able to forecast this eye going exactly over the length of Grand Bahama Island. Freeport about to get, again, the worst experiencing right now, that inner eye wall that'll have those 175 miles an hour. The radar, just 120 miles. Just an incredible scene there in South Florida and the hurricane and how close it'll come. I'll break down the threats for you here because they are going to be significant despite the fact that we don't think this is going to barrel in from east to west. Hurricane warnings posted from Boca Raton all the way up into Cape Canaveral, and then we have hurricane watches posted up to the north. Warning means conditions. Hurricane conditions within 24 hours, hurricane conditions possible within 48 hours. And the watches, the yellow you see, the winds are going to be so expansive here because it's going to be getting so close, that is the center of the storm, that we could be looking at sustained tropical storm force winds for a day or two across central Florida, including Disney World. That is something else, right? So here are the storm warnings as far as the storm surge watches and warnings, I should say. By the way, the storm warning here, the storm surge warning goes from Boca Raton all the way up into the Orlando area. That would be Cape Canaveral, across Brevard County there, and then you go further north and you get into a watch from Orlando heading up towards Jacksonville, and by Orlando I mean that latitude, not Orlando proper. Storm surge, 18 to 23 foot storm surge. Remember, some of these islands in the Bahamas only 10 foot above sea level. So you get 10 feet above sea level, and then they're going to be completely covered with 18 to 23. This is the potential storm surge for Florida. And I say potential because we still don't know how close this is going to come. It has not turned north yet. We're expecting that to happen, but we can't precisely predict exactly when that will happen. And that's so crucial because the closer this gets, the worse the effects will be for Florida. We could get into an outer eye wall situation here, raking the coast from south to north over the next couple of days. The other issue here is that this thing is basically, we can walk faster than the hurricane is right now. That's 5 mile an hour movement to the west, and it will continue with that slow movement. This is a 24-hour difference, right? From Monday 8 p.m. to Tuesday 8 p.m. east of West Palm Beach, and then east of Melbourne, and then eventually we are going to see the coastline jet out. So if it continues on that northerly path, we could have either a landfall or the same situation that we're having in Florida. I'll show you and leave you with the computer model forecast here again. Some of them indicating a more westerly movement, some indicating further east, and that is going to be the key as to what kind of effects Florida gets. Will they be more significant or not, depending on how close it gets? But right now, it looks like they're not really going to be out of the woods by any stretch of the imagination, just because of how close this thing is going to get.
The thing is just simply going right up the southeast coast. Pretty much everyone along that path is.
My concern has always been from the beginning that if that happens, if it gets close enough, essentially it's like multiple hurricanes making landfalls, right?
Yeah.
If you get that outer eye wall, or certainly the inner eye wall, raking across the entire coastline instead of just punching in. We're not thinking that's going to happen, right? But we are thinking it's going to get close enough where those hurricane force winds and those tropical storm force winds do extend into the coastline of Florida.
Cabrera, thank you very much.
So hard to predict, isn't it?
It is indeed.
Thank you so much.
Well, we do again know that the storm made its second landfall on Grand Bahama Island just a few hours ago, as Ivan pointed out.
Yeah, and CNN's Patrick Oppen is there in the resort city of Freeport.
The weather here in Freeport is gradually deteriorating as Hurricane Dorian moves off the nearby island of Abaco and heads this direction to the island where we are, Grand Bahama, and we are sensing winds picking up, more rain coming, and that is just going to get worse and worse because this storm, while incredibly powerful, a Category 5, the strongest storm ever to hit the Bahamas, it is also moving very slowly. It's a deadly combination, particularly on an island chain where so many islands are very low lying. Where we are right now, the highest point on this island is only about 30 feet high, the highest point of land. And so when you hear about a storm surge of 20 feet, that means in the hours and days ahead, much of this island where I am standing will be underwater. Islands around us, which are more low-lying, will be completely submerged. It is a terrifying prospect for the people, the many people who have decided to ride out this storm on those low-lying parts of this island and other islands around us. So not much people can do at this point because the weather is kicking up, conditions are deteriorating, and this is a storm for the history books. Hurricane Dorian is going to hit the Bahamas in a way that this island chain has never experienced. It is going to hit the Bahamas harder than any hurricane ever has before. Patrick Oppen, CNN, Freeport, the Bahamas.
And from the Bahamas, we have now Kayston Pinder with us. Kayston, a fisherman and resident in the Spanish Wells. Thank you again for being with us.
Good to be here.
Kayston, we do understand you're among the lucky ones. You went through this storm in an area that was spared the real brunt of Dorian, but what are you hearing from others nearby who might not have been quite as lucky?
Terrible stories about, we had some friends of ours send Snapchat videos and videos through WhatsApp and stuff about trees blowing through their houses and trying to stay locked down in their closets and just flooding. I had one report say that they were leaving the house in the eye of the storm because they had their roof. They were fortunate because their roof hadn't blown off yet, but they had 5 feet of water in the downstairs section of the home.
Wow. And for yourself, what was it like to go through this? I mean, this was one of the strongest storms to pass through that area.
Yeah, this is probably the strongest storm I've ever lived through. But here we only had it about, I think we had 75 mile an hour winds here because we're just far enough away. So we prepared for the worst and hoped for the best, and everything worked out pretty good. There's a few docks that blowed down. We have that really high tide this morning and the king tide tonight. So most of the roads near the harbor are going underwater and stuff, but we haven't seen any major damage. A few phone lines blown over, but that's about it. 1 or 2 trees. So we're pretty fortunate right now.
In those areas that were hit hardest, what do you believe it will be like for these officials to get in there to help people? How bad is the damage at this point, do you understand?
What I understand, the damage is everything's gone. From what I've heard, there's one or two houses here and there that are still standing. There's one home that we got a report there's, I think, 49 people in one home now because that home's still standing, and they're just trying to get back now in Abaco. And now Grand Bahama is now going to catch it in the dock, so it's going to be nighttime for them, so hoping and praying that they're all right.
And then as far as people getting, those essentials, food, water, getting those things across the island, how difficult will that be given the extensive damage?
It's pretty difficult. First of all, it's difficult to get in plenty of times, just because of it's hard to tell where you're going and what debris is in the water, and then once you get to the land, if you have big boats, a lot of the docks are so destroyed that you don't have anywhere to first dock your boat to offload water and supplies to people. So that's difficult in its own, besides the fact that you have trees and everything blown down for the roads to get to the dock that you have to clear out before you can distribute water and canned goods and gas and whatever you can. We are planning now, there's a town meeting tomorrow at 1:30 for us to figure out how we're going to get boats and bag up supplies to go to Abaco in the next few days. I know there's a GoFundMe account set up and stuff to hurricane relief for for Abaco and different things like that, just to get the funds to buy water and supplies, and a lot of accounts set up and stuff to hurricane relief for Abaco and different things like that, just to get the funds to buy water and supplies. And a lot of our fishing that we may take have distillation systems on the boat that can produce clean water.
Kason, again, let's underscore it. You were among the lucky ones, but you've spoken with people who didn't fare quite as well. The entire southeast coast right now, I think they're looking to you, to people like you who went through this storm. You got to get a sense of what this thing was all about. What would you tell people on the southeast coast as they prepare for wherever this storm goes next?
Well, my sisters are on the southeast coast. They're right in West Palm Beach. That's where they go to college, and I tell those to prepare for the worst and just be ready, because if it hits you dead on, it's going to be a lot of destruction. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, my uncle always told me. So.
I've heard that expression as well. Let's certainly hope for the best. Kason Pinder, we appreciate your time again. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
And hurricane warnings are in effect right now along Florida's eastern coast. Mandatory evacuations have already begun in some areas.
Residents there are boarding up their windows and storefronts. They're doing the best they can to prepare for this thing. The Martin County Sheriff delivered a very dire warning about it. Listen.
We are within 20 miles of an apocalyptic hurricane coming ashore on the Treasure Coast. If it does what the models are predicting, we will be okay.
Well, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis is not quite as optimistic. He says Hurricane Dorian is way too close for comfort, but the state is prepared.
The Florida National Guard will have 4,500 soldiers and airmen activated and ready to respond. They have 15 rotor wing helicopters available. An additional 24 have been offered from regional National Guard locations, and the active Army component has pre-positioned 40 additional helicopters near our state border to respond if needed.
So the officials are ready. People have made the decision. Do they leave or do they stay? And the storm is essentially walking closer to Florida. Our Rosa Flores has more on what's happening in Daytona Beach, Florida.
I'm at the Daytona International Speedway, home to NASCAR's Daytona 500, except right now it is doubling as a processing center for the more than 18,000 men and women from 34 U.S. states and Canada who will be eventually restoring power to Floridians. As you take a look around, you can see that this is a mini army of utility workers and utility trucks. Now, if you look closely, you'll see there's different logos, different license plates. Here is how it works. These utility workers drive into this processing center, they get checked in, they get a security briefing, and then they get dispatched to 20 strategic locations in the state of Florida. Once power goes out, they will be dispatched to those impacted areas. Now, this is Volusia County. It is the size of the state of Rhode Island here in the United States, and mandatory evacuations are scheduled for Monday at 10 a.m. Officials here tell us that those mandatory evacuations will be issued for individuals who live in the barrier islands and low-lying areas, and also those who live in RV parks as well. But officials also tell us that they're telling their residents that if they want to evacuate and to a safer location, that they should, that they do not need to wait for that evacuation order to be issued. Rosa Flores, CNN, Daytona Beach Fuel, and to a safer location, that they should, that they do not need to wait for that evacuation order to be issued. Rosa Flores, CNN, Daytona Beach, Florida.
Another mass shooting leaves multiple people dead in Texas, and once again, people are asking what can be done to stop the violence in America. We will discuss that when we return.
Got an idea for an invention, but don't know what to do next? Call my friends at InventHelp. They've been helping inventors for 35 years. It's easy.
With 65 offices, you can meet with an InventHelp representative near you who will keep your idea confidential and explain their invention process step by step. InventHelp has helped over 10,000 inventors get patents. And they offer 3D animations and prototyping services to help demonstrate your idea. InventHelp's exclusive databank includes over 9,000 companies who have agreed to confidentially review new ideas, like yours.
Your idea deserves a chance. Don't wonder what to do next. Step into the ring and take your best shot. Put InventHelp in your corner.
Take action and get the help you need from InventHelp. Call today for free information.
800-492-4211. Shot. Put InventHelp in your corner.
Take action and get the help you need from InventHelp. Call today for free information.
800-492-4211. That's 800-492-4211.
I'm calling in regards about my mother, and I'm here, and I just want to thank you because it saved my mother's life yesterday, and I'd like to know the names of the people that came in and saved her. It's a wonderful thing. Thank you.
With Life Alert, one touch of a button can get you help fast.
For a free Life Alert brochure, call 1-800-492-4211. That's 1-800-492-4211. Call now, 1-800-492-4211.
Important announcement. Funeral costs are rising every year, and more families are shocked and unexpectedly burdened when a loved one dies. If you're a U.S. resident between the age of 40 and 85, now is the time to call about the Funeral Advantage program. Through the Funeral Advantage program, your family receives a life insurance cash benefit up to $20,000 in the event of your death. If you live in a qualifying state and you're between age 40 and 85, call the number on your screen now to request your Final Wishes organizer, free without obligation. Don't delay. When you call, we'll have this second important booklet absolutely free. The 9 Things Every Senior Needs to Know About Funerals puts the facts on funeral planning in plain language. If you're between 40 and 85 and you live in a qualifying state, call today.
You have no risk or obligation. Call the number on your screen now.
It's time for a special announcement from Four Seasons Sunrooms and Windows. Transform your home and change your life with a Four Seasons sunroom. And watch this announcement until the very end for a special code for exclusive additional savings. And now it's time for Four Seasons. It's time for family gatherings, to stretch imaginations, to get together or find some time alone. It's time for a Four Seasons sunroom that lets you have it all for less money than you thought. Right now, for a limited time, all Four Seasons sunrooms are up to 25% off, with no money down and no interest for 12 full months. Call Four Seasons today. Four Seasons. It's time. Thanks for watching. Now call the number on your screen and mention the special code TIME and receive exclusive additional savings on your new sunroom. Four Seasons. It's time.
An unprecedented Democratic presidential town hall event. Climate crisis. Biden, Warren, Sanders, Harris, Buttigieg, Klobuchar, Booker, O'Rourke, Yang, Castro. 10 candidates, 10 town halls, all on one night. Wednesday night, 5 Eastern.
We have new details about the man who killed 7 people and injured 22 others in West Texas.
According to the New York Times, the 36-year-old had been fired from his trucking job a few hours before the shooting rampage took place. Police say he opened fire from inside his car. This taking place in Midland, Odessa, Texas. They don't know the motive yet. They're still investigating that.
And at a press briefing Sunday, the governor of Texas says he is tired of all the bloodshed. He has witnessed several mass shootings during his term, and notably, the latest massacre happened a day before looser gun laws went into effect there.
Notably, the U.S. President Donald Trump says background checks for gun buyers would not have stopped Saturday's attack.
But he insists he is working with Congress to find a solution to gun violence in America. CNN's Boris Sanchez has our report.
Sources say that White House officials have been working on some kind of plan to try to prevent mass shootings since the back-to-back shootings we saw at the beginning of August in Dayton, Ohio and El Paso, Texas, when President Trump, as he's done before, spoke ambitiously about passing some sort of gun control legislation. The president's position on this issue has shifted dramatically over time. The president, soon after shootings, speaking ambitiously about passing some form of gun control legislation, and then soon after drifting a bit. Listen to what the president said after those back-to-back shootings in Texas and Ohio about background checks. Listen.
Oh, I have an appetite for background checks. We're going to be doing background checks. We're working with Democrats. We're working with Republicans. We already have very strong background checks, but we're going to be filling in some of the loopholes, as we call them, at the border.
President Trump, they're talking about having an appetite for background checks. Notably, though, when the president has shifted his tone on this issue, it's come soon after conversations directly between the White House, often President Trump himself, and the leadership of the National Rifle Association. Following this most recent shooting in Texas, the president was asked again about background checks when he was returning to the White House from Camp David, where he spent the weekend. Listen to his response.
We're looking at a lot of different things. We're looking at a lot of different bills, ideas, concepts. It's been going on for a long while. Background checks. I will say that for the most part, sadly, if you look at the last 4 or 5, going back even 5 or 6 or 7 years, for the most part, as strong as you make your background checks, they would not have stopped any of it. So it's a big problem. It's a mental problem. It's a big problem.
The president there broadly dismissing the idea of background checks being effective just a few weeks after endorsing the idea. We should point out Senator Pat Toomey of Pennsylvania said that he has spoken frequently with the president about passing some form of gun control legislation. He says the president has told him he wants to pass something meaningful. Ultimately, what that amounts to is unclear. Boris Sanchez, CNN, the White House.
To put it all into focus now, we have Scott Lucas. Scott, a professor of international politics at the University of Birmingham and the founder and editor of EA Worldview Live this hour in Birmingham, England. Good to have you with us, Scott.
Thank you, George.
Scott, for a moment, let's put the politics, the questions about that aside. Sort of an open-ended question for you. Obviously, there's a lot of heartbreak. This is hard to see personally there in my home state of Texas. As an expat yourself, living there in the UK, seeing all of this play out in your own home country, mass shootings, one after the other, after the other, after the other, after the other, after the other. What's the view from where you sit?
It tears me up, George. I mean, I've been here for more than 30 years, but you never quite leave home. And every few weeks, we find out that 5, 10, 15, maybe more people have died unnecessarily just because something isn't being done about the prevalence of guns. And we know that's the fundamental issue. And I know that I talked to you and we discussed the various measures and we discussed the politics. And I'm pretty sure I'm going to be talking to you, well, in another 4 weeks. Just like 4 weeks ago, you and I were talking about El Paso, talking about Dayton. And it's like, folks, get your acts together. And I'm talking about those folks who know and can do something about this, because too many of the people I grew up with, too many of my fellow Americans, they won't see tomorrow. They won't see their kids grow up. They won't see wherever the country goes because someone has taken their life because they could get access to a handgun, a rifle, or a semi-automatic weapon.
Our Boris Sanchez just pointed this out. The U.S. president called the shooting in Texas a very sad situation. He promised to work with Congress, Republicans, and Democrats to deal with gun violence in the United States. But the president also downplaying the need for background checks on gun buyers politically. Can the president continue to walk a bit of a tightrope here?
You know, I leave it to Donald Trump, whatever tightrope he chooses to walk on. For me, talk's cheap. And what we heard yesterday is worthless. Look, you know, after El Paso, after Dayton, Donald Trump said, oh, yeah, background checks. 18 months ago after Parkland, Florida, where, 16, 17 staff and students died, he said, oh, we'll do some, maybe we'll raise the age on weapons. He said it after other mass shootings. And then he talks to, for example, as he did 2 weeks ago, the NRA had one up here on the phone, and any talk of doing anything